The earliest memory I have of my mother is the scent of her lavender perfume. I was 4 years old when she died, but that fragrance still haunts me, especially on quiet nights when I'm alone in my room, trying to piece together the fragments of our brief time together. My name is Chloe, and this is the story of how I lost 2 families and found myself. I don't remember much from the weeks after Mom died. Most of my time was spent at my grandparents' house, a cozy 2-story home that would later play a crucial role in my life. Grandma Martha and Grandpa Joe tried their best to shield me from the pain, keeping me occupied with cookies and stories while Dad handled the funeral arrangements. 1 year passed in a blur of transitions between Dad's house and my grandparents'. I didn't realize it then, but looking back, I can see how Dad was gradually pulling away, spending less time with me and more time elsewhere. I'd hear snippets of adult worry, words like too soon and moving on, but I was too young to understand their significance. I was 5 when Dad brought home the news that would change everything. I remember sitting on our worn living room couch, my small legs barely reaching the edge, when he walked in with a woman I'd seen a few times before. She had long brown hair and a kind smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Chloe, honey," Dad said, his voice carrying a forced cheerfulness that even my young mind detected, "this is Linda. We got married last weekend, and she's going to be your new mom." I stared at Linda's stomach, which showed a noticeable bump under her flowered dress. Dad followed my gaze and added, "And you're going to have a baby sister soon. Isn't that exciting?" The word exciting hung in the air like a lead balloon. Linda stepped forward, her hands clasped in front of her. "I know this is a lot to take in, Chloe. But I promise we'll make it work." I remember nodding, not because I agreed, but because it seemed like the thing to do. I retreated to my room that night and pulled out the only photo I had of my mom showing her holding me as a baby, both of us laughing at something off camera. I touched her face gently, trying to remember the sound of her laugh. It was strange watching Dad transform into a different person. The man who used to spend weekends taking me to the park now spent his time painting the nursery and attending birthing classes with Linda. I tried not to mind, really, I did. After all, Linda wasn't unkind to me. She'd drive me to school in her blue Honda, ask about my day, and make sure I had everything I needed. But there was always something temporary about her attention, like she was babysitting rather than parenting. I'd catch her absent-mindedly rubbing her growing belly while I told her about my day at school, her eyes glazed with thoughts of her own baby. "Linda, can we get ice cream?" I asked one afternoon after school. "Not today, sweetie. I need to rest, the baby's been kicking all day," she replied, heading straight for the couch. It became a common response, "Not today, maybe later, another time." Then Emma arrived. I remember the day Dad brought them home from the hospital. He was carrying this tiny bundle wrapped in a pink blanket, his face glowing with a pride I'd never seen before, not even in the photos of him holding me as a baby. "Chloe, meet your baby sister, Emma," he announced, his voice soft with wonder. I stood on my tiptoes to peek at the red-faced infant. "Hi, Emma," I whispered, trying to sound like the responsible big sister I was supposed to be. That's when everything changed. Suddenly, there were new rules in the house, all revolving around Emma. "Chloe, please don't run in the house, Emma's sleeping." "Chloe, can you help fold these clothes while I feed Emma?" "Not so loud, honey. You'll upset your sister." I became a shadow in my own home, tiptoeing around, trying to make myself smaller, quieter, less noticeable. My responsibilities grew while my privileges shrank. I learned to clean bottles, fold tiny clothes, and tidy up toys that weren't mine. One day, I came home from school to find Dad and Linda cooing over Emma, who was playing with a brand new tablet designed for babies. "Look how smart she is," Linda exclaimed as Emma randomly hit the screen. "She's going to be a genius." I glanced down at my worn-out sneakers, remembering how Dad had said we couldn't afford new ones this month. But here was Emma, barely able to walk, with the latest educational gadgets scattered around her. The pattern continued. Emma got designer clothes from the mall while I got hand-me-downs from our cousins. She had a room full of the latest toys while I still treasured the stuffed bear my mom had given me, now missing an eye and patched in several places. It wasn't that they were cruel. They remembered to feed me, clothe me, send me to school. But it was always an afterthought, like checking off a box on a to-do list. The only time they seemed to really notice me was when Grandma and Grandpa visited. "Chloe needs new clothes," Grandma would point out, and suddenly Dad would remember to take me shopping. "Don't you think Chloe might like that new book series all the kids are reading?" Grandpa would suggest, and magically, the books would appear. I tried to be understanding. I really did. I kept my room clean, did my homework without being asked, and helped with Emma whenever they needed me. I thought if I was good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, they'd remember I was their daughter too. When Emma started walking and talking, I thought things would get better. I imagined us becoming best friends, sharing secrets, and playing together like the sisters I saw on TV. I even decorated half of my room with welcome signs the day she was old enough to string full sentences together. "Want to play dolls with me, Emma?" I asked hopefully one afternoon. She looked at me with those calculating eyes that seemed too old for her 4-year-old face. "No, I want your dollhouse." "But that's mine. Grandma gave it to me for Christmas," I protested. Emma's response was to march straight to Dad and Linda, her face scrunching up in that familiar way that meant trouble for me. "Daddy, Chloe won't share her toys with me," she wailed, tears appearing on command. "Chloe," Dad's voice boomed from the kitchen. "Stop being selfish and let your sister play with your toys." That was just the beginning. Soon, Emma figured out she could take anything of mine she wanted. My art supplies, my books, even my clothes, nothing was off limits. When I tried to get them back, it always ended the same way. "Mom, Chloe's being mean again." "John, tell your daughter to stop bothering Emma." But the toy snatching was just the warm-up. Emma developed a talent for setting traps that would get me in trouble. Like the time she deliberately spilled juice on her new dress and told our parents I'd pushed her. Or when she broke her tablet and claimed I'd done it out of jealousy. Each time, I'd try to defend myself. "That's not what happened. She's lying." And each time, Dad would shake his head disapprovingly. "Stop trying to get attention, Chloe. Go to your room." My only refuge was at my grandparents' house. They saw through Emma's act and weren't afraid to say so. "John," Grandpa would say to Dad during Sunday dinners, his voice firm but tired, "you need to treat your daughters equally." "We do treat them equally," Linda would snap back. "But Chloe is just difficult. Always causing problems, always fighting with Emma. While Emma is such a sweet, well-behaved child." I'd sit there, pushing food around my plate, as Grandma's voice would rise. "Open your eyes. That sweet child of yours is manipulating everyone in this house. You're raising a little con artist, and you can't even see it." "Mother, please," Dad would try to intervene. "You're being unfair to Emma." "Unfair?" Grandpa would scoff. "What's unfair is watching you two spoil one child rotten while treating the other like she's invisible. That's what's unfair." But it was like talking to a wall. Dad and Linda had their narrative about their perfect younger daughter and their problematic older one, and nothing could shake it, not even the truth staring them in the face. Senior year should have been exciting, full of dreams about college and future plans. Instead, I found myself constantly worried about whether I'd even get to go. One night, as I was heading to the kitchen for a glass of water, I heard whispers that made me stop in my tracks. "John, it doesn't make sense." Linda's voice was hushed but intense. "The tuition money for Chloe, we could use it for Emma instead. Get her into that private high school she wants, and later, a better college." My heart stopped. They were talking about my college fund, the money Mom and Dad had started saving before I was even born. "I can't," Dad replied, his voice weak. "I promised Sarah. I promised her I'd make sure Chloe got an education." "Sarah's been dead for 14 years. Linda's whisper turned sharp. "You can't let promises to a dead woman control our lives forever." Emma deserves the best education we can give her. There was a long pause before Dad spoke again. My parents would disinherit me if I did that. You know how they are about Chloe. My legs felt weak. So that was it. The only reason Dad was keeping his promise to Mom was fear of losing his inheritance. Not love for me, not respect for Mom's memory, just money. Fine, Linda spat. But I think it's ridiculous we're spending so much on her when Emma could use it better. I slipped back to my room without the water, my throat too tight to swallow anyway. Graduation came and went. I got accepted to the local college's graphic design program, which meant I could live at home and save money. Grandma and Grandpa surprised me with a top-of-the-line laptop at my graduation party. "This is for all those A's you earned, sweetheart," Grandpa said, hugging me tight. "You'll need it for your design work." I was over the moon. Finally, I had professional-grade equipment for my studies. But my excitement was tempered by transportation concerns. The campus was across town, and I hoped Dad might let me use his old Honda now that he had a new car. "Dad?" I approached him one evening. "About getting to college." "We can't afford another car, Chloe," he cut me off before I could finish. "The tuition payments are already stretching us thin. You'll have to take the bus." I nodded, swallowing my disappointment. But just 2 days later, I overheard them in the living room. "I think the red Mercedes would be perfect for Emma's Sweet 16, Linda was saying. "She'll be learning to drive soon, and it's such a safe car for a new driver." "Isn't it a bit expensive?" Dad asked, but I could hear the smile in his voice. "Only the best for our little princess," Linda replied. "We can start saving now, she'll be 16 before we know it." I stood there, my bus pass clutched in my hand, thinking about the hour-long commute I'd be making each way while they planned to buy my 14-year-old sister a luxury car. 2 years into college, life had fallen into a predictable routine of classes, bus rides, and trying to stay invisible at home. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Chloe?" Grandma's voice sounded strained. "Could you come visit us this weekend? Your grandfather's had a bit of trouble with his heart, and we need to talk to you about something important." That Saturday, I found myself sitting in their familiar living room, the same place where I'd found refuge so many times during my childhood. Grandpa looked pale, but was sitting up in his armchair, Grandma perched on the armrest beside him. They exchanged a look I couldn't quite read, then Grandma took a deep breath. "Chloe, dear, we need to tell you something. After your grandfather's heart attack, we've done a lot of thinking about the future. We're getting old, sweetheart," Grandpa continued. "And maintaining this house is becoming too much for us. We've decided to move to Pine Grove Nursing Home." The tears came before I could stop them. But. Now, Grandma moved to sit beside me, pulling me into a hug that smelled of her signature lavender perfume, so similar to Mom's. "We'll have excellent care there. And you can visit anytime you want." "I'll come every weekend," I promised through my tears. They both laughed, the sound warming the room. "You most certainly will not," Grandpa declared. "You're young. You should be out with friends, living your life, maybe meeting a nice boy." Then their faces grew serious again. Grandpa leaned forward in his chair. "There's something else we need to tell you. We've spent about half our savings on securing our place at Pine Grove. The rest will go to the family after we're gone." I started to protest that I didn't want to talk about this, but he held up his hand. "But the house," he continued, "we've already taken care of that. We've registered it in your name, Chloe. This house belongs to you now. It's all legal and official." My head spun. "Does Dad know?" Grandpa's face hardened slightly. "It's none of his business. This was our house to give, and we chose to give it to you." "But," I looked around at the familiar walls, the photos spanning generations, the corner where I used to hide during hide and seek. "Why?" "Because we're not blind," Grandma said softly. "And we want to make sure you're taken care of." I sat there, stunned, looking at these two people who had always been my strongest supporters, who had seen me when everyone else looked past me. "I won't tell them," I whispered, understanding instinctively that this needed to stay secret for now. Grandpa nodded approvingly. "Good girl. What's done is done, and it's no one's business but ours." 2 weeks passed in a blur of helping Grandma and Grandpa move to Pine Grove. The day they handed Dad the keys to their house, I felt my stomach twist. He had no idea those keys weren't really his to take. "This is wonderful," Linda gushed, already planning renovations in her head. "No more rent. We can finally have a real family home." They wasted no time moving us in. I watched silently as Linda walked through each room, her nose wrinkling at the vintage furniture and familiar decorations that held so many of my childhood memories. "This place needs a complete overhaul," she declared, running a finger along Grandma's antique sideboard. "And a deep clean. For now, the girls can share the blue room upstairs, it's the only one properly habitable." My heart sank. Share a room with Emma? At 16, she'd become even more impossible than before. As if on cue, Emma's shrill voice filled the house. "I am not sharing a room with her," she screamed, stamping her foot on Grandma's hardwood floors. "This isn't fair. I deserve the master bedroom. Why should I be stuck with her? Make her sleep in the closet or the basement or whatever. I don't care." I stood there, clutching a box of my belongings, as Emma's tantrum escalated. The familiar headache that came with her screaming started to pulse behind my eyes. "I hate this. I hate this house. I hate having to share anything with her." I'd learned long ago that there was no point in arguing. Without a word, I carried my box upstairs to the blue room, the same room where I used to sleep during weekend visits with Grandma and Grandpa. I set my laptop on the old desk by the window, placed a few books beside it, and left for my afternoon classes. The whole bus ride to campus, I tried to focus on my upcoming design project, but Emma's words kept echoing in my head. She'd gotten worse over the years, if that was possible. More entitled, more cruel, more calculating. When I returned that evening, the house was quiet. Dad and Linda's voices drifted up from the kitchen, but there was no sign of Emma. I climbed the stairs to our shared room, my footsteps silent on the carpet runner Grandma had installed years ago. The moment I opened the door, my world stopped. My laptop, my beautiful graduation gift from Grandma and Grandpa, my lifeline for my design work, lay shattered on the floor. The screen was cracked beyond repair, the case bent and broken. Emma sat on her bed, a satisfied smirk playing on her lips as she watched my face crumple. "What did you do?" My voice came out as a whisper, then rose to a shout. "What did you do?" "Oops," she said, examining her perfectly manicured nails. "Accidents happen. But go ahead, try telling them. We both know who they'll believe." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I did it on purpose, and there's nothing you can do about it." Something inside me snapped. All the years of being pushed aside, ignored, gaslight, it all came rushing up like a tidal wave. Before I knew what I was doing, I lunged at Emma, my vision blurred with tears of rage. "You spoiled, entitled little brat," I screamed, grabbing her shoulders. She shrieked, not her usual calculated cry for attention, but a genuine sound of surprise. We tumbled onto the floor, years of pent-up frustration finally exploding. "Help! She's crazy! Help!" Emma screamed, while I kept shouting about all the times she'd destroyed my things, lied about me, made my life miserable. Dad and Linda burst into the room, Dad pulling me off Emma, while Linda rushed to cradle her precious daughter. "Look!" I pointed at my shattered laptop, my voice breaking. "Look what she did. Grandma and Grandpa's graduation gift, she destroyed it on purpose." She admitted it. Emma's face transformed instantly, tears streaming down her cheeks as she clutched Linda. "It was an accident. I just bumped into the desk, I didn't mean to." And then she attacked me like a wild animal. "You evil, horrible girl," Linda shrieked at me, her face contorted with rage. "How dare you attack my daughter? John, I want her out of this house. Now. She's dangerous." I turned to Dad, desperately hoping he'd finally see through Emma's act. But his face was hard, closed off. "Pack your things," he said coldly. "And get out." The words hit me like physical blows. "Why?" I whispered, then found my voice. "Why do you always choose them? What happened to the dad who used to love me? Who promised Mom he'd take care of me?" His face reddened with anger. "Don't you dare bring your mother into this. You want to know the truth? You've been nothing but a burden since she died. A constant reminder of a past I wanted to forget. Linda and Emma are my real family now. You're just excess baggage we've been carrying around. You have 1 hour to leave my house." As he turned to leave, Emma's smug voice piped up. "I can finally have this room all to myself. I'm thinking pink walls, maybe a crystal chandelier." Linda joined in, already planning the renovation. "We'll get you new furniture, sweetheart. Make the space truly yours." Something shifted inside me at that moment. A lifetime of being pushed aside, of swallowing my words, of trying to be smaller, it all fell away. I stood up straighter, my voice clear and strong. "Actually, this isn't your house to renovate." They all turned to stare at me. "What are you talking about?" Linda snapped. With steady hands, I reached into my purse and pulled out the property documents Grandpa had given me. "This house belongs to me. Grandma and Grandpa transferred ownership to me before they moved to Pine Grove. If anyone's leaving, it's you three." The silence that followed was deafening. Dad snatched the papers from my hands, his face growing pale as he read. This can't be legal," Linda stuttered. "John, call your father right now." Dad's hands shook as he dialed Grandpa's number, putting it on speaker. "Dad, what is the meaning of this?" he demanded. Grandpa's voice was calm, almost amused. "I see Chloe's finally told you about the house. How could you do this to us?" Dad's voice cracked. "How could we do this?" Grandpa's voice turned hard. "How could you do what you've done to Chloe all these years? We watched you turn from a loving father into a spineless man who lets his wife and spoiled daughter walk all over him and abuse your firstborn child. Yes, we gave the house to Chloe. We knew this day would come, when you'd finally show your true colors." Dad started to respond with something angry, but Grandpa cut him off. "Choose your next words very carefully, son. One more disrespectful word, and you and your precious Emma lose your inheritance too. Your choice." I looked at the three shocked faces before me, my father, Linda, and Emma. They'd gone from righteous anger to stunned silence in the span of minutes. Now Linda was backpedaling fast. "Chloe, sweetie, we were just upset about the fight. We didn't really mean any of it. Of course we don't want you to leave. We were just joking." Her voice had that sickly sweet tone she used when trying to manipulate situations. "I have a really bad sense of humor," I replied, my voice steady. "So I'm going to take everything you said at face value. You have 1 week to find a new place and move out. I'll be staying at a hostel this week while you pack. I don't trust myself to be around any of you right now." "Chloe, please," Dad started, but I cut him off. 1 week. After that, I'm changing the locks." I walked out of my grandparents' house, no, my house, that night with my head held high, even as tears streamed down my face. The hostel bed was uncomfortable, but it was better than staying under the same roof with people who'd just shown me exactly who they were. True to my word, they were out within the week. On moving day, they made one last attempt at reconciliation. "We're so sorry," Dad said, standing in the doorway with the last box. "We realize now how horrible we've been." Linda nodded, frantically. "We never meant for things to go this far." Even Emma managed to look somewhat contrite, though she said nothing. I stood silently, watching them leave. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. 3 months later, I sat in Grandpa and Grandma's room at Pine Grove, telling them everything that had happened since moving day. The afternoon sun streamed through the window as Grandma poured tea into delicate cups. She'd insisted on bringing her good china to the nursing home. You did the right thing, standing up for yourself, Grandpa said, but his eyes were sad. Though I hope someday you can all find a way to be family again. Grandma reached over and squeezed my hand. But only when you're ready, dear. And only if they've truly changed. I nodded, telling them about my decision to rent out the house while I finished college. The rental income helped cover my expenses, and I'd found a small apartment closer to campus. I'd even been able to replace my laptop with the first month's rent. Dad called yesterday, I said quietly, stirring my tea. They're living in some rundown apartment complex on the edge of town. He apologized again, said they're struggling. And how do you feel about that? Grandma asked gently. Honestly? Part of me feels guilty, but another part thinks they needed to experience consequences for once. I set my cup down. I told him I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive them, or if I even want to try. That's fair, Grandpa said. Some wounds take a long time to heal. I'm graduating next semester with my degree in graphic design. I've already had some promising interviews with local agencies, and my portfolio is getting stronger every day. Sometimes I drive by the house and see the young family who's renting it now, their kids playing in the yard, lights glowing warmly in the windows at dusk. Maybe someday I'll move back in. Maybe someday I'll even be ready to have a relationship with Dad, Linda, and Emma again. But for now, I'm focused on building my own life, one where I don't have to make myself smaller to make room for anyone else.